We'll get into the latest winter storm timing in just a minute, but let's look at those storm reports from our Saturday and into our Sunday here. Of course, we had the most devastating tornadoes in and around Hendersonville, Tennessee, as well as north of Clarksville and moving into southern Kentucky. But we also had some tornadoes near Jackson, Mississippi, as well as in southeastern Alabama and the Florida Panhandle. In fact, those ones in Alabama and Florida happened this morning with that line of storms I just circled right there. Let's time out that line and what's going on in the Carolinas right now. I'll talk about some of the snow in just a minute, but here we go with that level 2 severe weather threat. We have one of them in the parts of the Panhandle of Florida. That one overall waning right now. We've also got a zone here over parts of the eastern Carolinas and into southeastern Virginia. That's our primary slight risk that we're going to be focusing on through the rest of our Sunday here, and you can see some of the cells already moving through this area, through the Outer Banks. We've had a tornado watch now in effect for a little while, and this is going to continue until at least 8 p.m. this evening. Wouldn't be shocked if they even extended some sort of alerts or watches on beyond that. You can see this is 7 p.m. Eastern Time, storms around and east of Raleigh. Just a big mess of clusters of showers and storms, so you really need to be on high alert consistently here in this region just because of how kind of unpredictable and non-exact these storms locations and tracks are going to be. Pretty messy though, pretty big blobs of cells here, and I think the more discrete supercells are overall going to be right along the Outer Banks or just offshore, which is good for keeping the tornado potential overall limited onshore. But you can see some of these cells moving through around 10, 11 o'clock tonight. Again, this is why I'm saying that tornado watch might not necessarily, include the entire time we could be seeing tornadoes. Clusters of cells in southern Virginia as well, the Virginia Beach area, seeing storms moving in from the southwest to the northeast throughout the evening. Then it looks like we'll have kind of one more line segment try to get going here from Greensboro eastward towards Raleigh as well. These areas we'll see the one little line try to move on through into the overnight hours here, and you can see some of those cells on the southern end of that line once again looking a little bit more discrete and a little bit more tornado producing here. Continuing to time these cells on out through the rest of the evening, you can see really forming that line as it makes its way towards the coast. The last burst of some damaging winds and some heavy rainfall here in eastern North Carolina and Virginia into the evening hours, the late overnight hours here at 4, 5, 6 a.m. and then this should be pushing off the coastline there after that. Now, in terms of where our rotating storm tracks are expected to go, this is the HRRR model, our most reliable short-term model, and you can see those tracks really right along that North Carolina coastline being the primary place we get those gray colors. Not to say we couldn't see some tornadoes, in central North Carolina or central Virginia, but overall it's going to be that zone I just circled, and especially closer to the coast, where we'll have the rotating tracks. But hard to see on the screen. There's just a tiny little bit of, slightly grayer color there in the part of New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and then on up into Cape Cod. Maybe a slightly rotating track in those zones, so wouldn't rule out a brief spin up or, of course, offshore waterspout in those areas. It's all connected to this low pressure system that's hanging a cold front down over Appalachia, and with our full timeline of dynamic impacts here, I'm going to show you how another low pressure system that developed just really helps to amplify, especially the cold air wrapping back around at the back end of this. So here we go. Let's play this out. This is around 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Pretty much everybody in the rest of the timing for these storms is in Eastern Time. You can see Snowfall banging up against Appalachia, but pretty much everybody else seeing a southerly flow here. In fact, a very strong southerly flow at that, with very rich Gulf and even Atlantic moisture being pumped on all the way on up into New England. But a new low is developing here into parts of North Carolina and Virginia. That's going to help to bring very high winds and heavy rainfall here into New England, especially southern New England here and the coastlines of New England. But you can see how as that low pressure begins to try and get itself together with the original cold front combined here, we're going to have some snowfall start to really fill in and over central New York, upstate New York, as well towards the Adirondacks, back towards Pittsburgh, maybe a brief shot of snow, although it will probably be drying out by the time any sort of snowfall chill, enough chill to produce that snowfall would hit you there in Pittsburgh. We continue to see just a feisty southerly flow, some gusty winds picking on up into the overnight hours here over parts of New York City, over parts of southern New England. But at this point, we're beginning to see some snowfall wrap back around parts of Virginia, central North Carolina that saw thunderstorms at points today. We'll end up seeing some snowfall wrap back around. Places like Washington, D.C., you're in the line of fire for at least a brief period of some wet snowfall flakes here as that low pressure really becomes noticeable into the overnight hours of tonight, 3, 4, 5 a.m. Eastern Time here. That southerly flow just continues, though, right along that immediate coastline, and I'm not anticipating it to leave. So really, if you're pretty much right along and east of that I-95 corridor here, you're mostly expected to see rain, if not completely see rain here throughout this event. The coastline of Maine staying snow-free with this, as well as most snow stays into parts of northwestern Maine, parts of Vermont, parts of northern New Hampshire. But look at this as we go into our 7 a.m. time frame on our Monday morning. Some snowfall, maybe interacting with areas like Baltimore, briefly touching places like Philadelphia and getting in the mix, but New York City on over to Providence, Rhode Island, Hartford, Connecticut, Boston, all these areas, Concord, New Hampshire, overall looking like we'll stay rain in these zones. Portland, Maine, Bangor, Maine, staying rain in these locations, but it's going to be a close call. And notice how we get some of that snow to just try and push on in with that colder air towards the end. Montpelier, Vermont, in fact, the entire state of Vermont looking to turn over to snow by the end here. Northern New York as well into our 10 a.m. time frame on our Monday. We continue to see that southerly flow, though, dominate right along that coastline, right? I keep mentioning that southerly flow because of how prominent it is. The wind's picking up with this system as it bombs out and combines with the old low. So pretty much this zone I'm circling right now is where we're going to see snowfall out of this system, okay? And it will be quite heavy at times. Not necessarily big accumulation, but it will be heavy when it falls. So just, monitor the forecast closely for changes. Overall, the road shouldn't be extremely slippery just because we're falling on, in most cases, in fact, in many cases, roads that are going to be above freezing just because of how warm it's actually been ahead of this front. And then the snow won't last long enough to cool those surfaces down. But still, watch out for some slippery driving conditions. We get some high winds to start picking up in parts of western Carolinas and Georgia into our afternoon and evening time frame today. Some 40-mile-per-hour gusts coming in from the northwest there. You can see that influx of wind pushing towards places like Washington, D.C., Richmond, Raleigh tonight. You can see those gusts through central South Carolina as well, around 40 miles per hour. Also around 40 to 50 miles per hour is going to be those gusts with that strong, prominent southerly flow that I've been stressing all along here through Long Island, through parts of, Hartford, Connecticut, through Providence, Rhode Island. That's why these areas are staying rain, because that southerly push is just so strong here. And again, that's why I wouldn't rule out a brief water spout, some sort of marine warning, or maybe even a quick spin-up tornado on land here. Into the 1 a.m. time frame tonight, we continue to see those 30, 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts push from the northwest to the southeast, back on down into the mid-Atlantic. But it's really these winds that become the big focal point and concern into our Monday morning, gusting 50, 60 miles per hour right off that main coastline, right off the coastline of Nantucket, or right over it, in fact, here in the Cape Cod zones. So just, these zones really should watch out for a potential hurricane-force gust to briefly stem out of this. Even as we go into the afternoon hours, you're still not, completely out of it here into parts of Maine. Wind gusts pushing back and wrapping back around the system, moving in from the southwest to the northeast here, a final push there through even parts of the interior northeast, some gusts 40-plus miles per hour into our Monday afternoon. So just really a dynamic scenario here in the way this storm system bombs out. And of course, it's been overperforming all along. Wouldn't anticipate it to not overperform as it continues heading in this direction, which is why it's all too important just to continue monitoring your forecast and see if maybe a tornado could spin up even along that main coastline there, even though that's a pretty low end chance. Now, tracking the big temperature crash, let's just put a little pointer down here over the Richmond area just to kind of give you an example of what's going to happen. Thunderstorms pushing through that tornado watch and that risk area near you, right, into the through about 8, 9, 10 o'clock this evening. By the time we go to midnight, you drop from around 65, say around 11 p.m., to 1 a.m., you'll be around 45 degrees in that zone. We'll see temperatures. Again, this is when we're going to begin to see snow in the northeast, when you see those lighter blue colors erupt. But those lighter blues are where we're still talking, say, 32 to 36 degrees. So not necessarily, again, freezing at the surface, but cold enough in the atmosphere for that snow to come down. And your forecast snowfall looks just like this. Spots in the Appalachians could quickly pick up maybe 3, 4, 5 inches of snowfall. We could see snowfall try to work its way all the way, again, towards New York City, towards some of the coastal areas. But it's just the way this system is shaped that really allows parts of eastern and northeastern PA, parts of northeastern New York through Vermont, and pretty much the entire state of Vermont, as well as New Hampshire and into northwestern Maine, to especially get hit with the snowfall. Some spots there into Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine could pick up close to a foot. But again, looking around some of our larger population centers here, maybe a quick dusting to an inch of snowfall, making the grounds a little bit white there at the White House in Washington, D.C. And then with your forecast rainfall here, some of these totals pushing on up parts of the Outer Bank coastline here, on up into Long Island, as well as on the southern New England shores. Some of these totals will be anywhere from around 3, 4, 5 inches of rainfall, so very heavy totals in those zones as this system makes its way on off from the southwest to the northeast. So really just summarizing here, we've got that original low pressure system in the cold front helping to spark the severe weather. Secondary low develops that really increases that wind push from southwest to northeast here along the New England coastline, and that's why all these areas I just circled will see some significant impacts in rain, and of course we'll see that wraparound snow towards the end for many communities. Please hit subscribe for accurate accurate, easy to understand, and passionate forecasting. Hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope everyone is staying safe. Prayers to everyone who was impacted by those tornadoes yesterday and this morning here over parts of the south and the southeast. Here are the credits, everyone. Have a great day.